Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. I have someone really special with me today, Miss Dr. Tara Kartha, as a matter of fact, who has spent a long time in the National Security Council Secretariat, as well as the fact that she's an author and quite an authority on our very friendly neighbor on the West. So let's try and pull out some information with her as to what she thinks is going to happen to Pakistan going into 2024. 24 we know is going to be a turbulent year for the entire world with 54 elections, including allegedly in Pakistan as well. So let's try and find out what's happening. Namaskar, ma'am. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Good to be on your show finally, Adi.
Thank you so much. Ma'am, just an opening thought. Does Pakistan even plan to be in 2024? Do you see any, just as a light-hearted,
Yeah.
opener?
No,
What do you think? You know?
I don't think that's actually a question many people are asking, including Pakistanis themselves. That is, Pakistan as a viable state. Is it
Yeah.
going to exist? So, to that, I say it is not a viable state right now. So, let's
Hmm.
not look at it that way. The way things are going, the way you just, let's take why not? I mean, you have years and years of mismanagement, right? Political as well as, of course, the military poking its nose into every single thing and thinking it knows more than anybody else. Decades of that. That is one. Second is the structure of the state, which is the bureaucracy, which is forms the outer layer. I mean, sorry, what shall I say? The skeleton of aspects of a state is the bureaucracy. Bureaucracy has been undermined thoroughly because of
Hmm.
politicization. They once had a very good bureaucracy, by the way. They were very good. Now that is gone. Third is that each state is on its own. You saw the Baloch march towards Islamabad. I mean, the way they were treated, that was horrendous. And did anybody report it? And nobody bothered to report. But the Baloch and the Pashtuns getting together is a huge, huge thing. You had that picture where he's Pashtun's relatives are being hugged by the Baloch people, all that, Manzoor Pashtun. So it's crossed an emotional barrier. Earlier they used to have this thing ki Baloch alag hai, Pashtun alag hai. All that is gone. That is another. Next is, of course, the fact that as its economy, which is the obvious one, that the economy has gone for a six, its IMF program to IMF program, none of them being completed, them defaulting. People are pulling out. What is the investment? Nothing. Where is the FDI into Pakistan? So, in all those aspects, and what is the basic requirement of a state is that you control your territory. Does Pakistan control its territory? It doesn't seem to me that it does. So, as a viable state, it is in difficulties already. If this trajectory continues, it could go anywhere. And that is not exactly a great thing for us to cheer because if a state doesn't, having said that, states don't break up very easily.
Hmm.
But if they start, no, states don't. I mean, even you saw that the whole Yugoslav war, how it went out, who encouraged whom, that's a long another story. But it was done with active outside assistance that break up of Yugoslavia.
Yeah. Yeah.
States don't really break up that easily. But in this case, it is about what 30 years of encouraging terrorism on both sides, terrorism, creating this whole what shall I say, doctrine of using non-state actors, which has backfired so badly. So when the basic aspect of a non-state actor is the moment you give the weapons of violence to someone other than the state starts corroding because another aspect of a state is that it controls all weapons of violence, weapons of whatever weapons there are is controlled by the state. It is mandate is only for the state to use
Hmm.
force. Once that starts eroding, the state also starts eroding.
Gee.
So that is what is happening in Pakistan right now. So I'll just stop there. That's just a quick summary.
That's very interesting because you say that. One of the things I kind of been saying it in a very light heart, but I don't know whether I actually have started believing it myself. When you say even a lie 100 times, you tend to start believing it. I say that Pakistan is not a country anymore. It's a space known as Pakistan. It's a space between Afghanistan and India, which is known as Pakistan. Because There are two, three things, two, three factors to it. You brought out the Baloch protest, which I will ask you in the next question, but the sheer factor that the control over KP is getting contested now, and we recently also have reports of Imran Khan being in hospital, and we know the soft corner for Imran Khan within KP. So, what do you think is happening in that area? And as we were talking yesterday offline, uh, I feel that Asim Munir is planning to do something in that area to kind of rate his control back, destabilize Afghanistan, multiple factors. What do you think is happening in the province of KP? Because that seems to be a powder keg to begin with.
No, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't think Asim Munir has a choice anymore. Because the TTP, since somewhere mid last year, as you may know, has started a whole. It's earlier it was these little groups operating independently, as TTP in the broad framework of TTP. That is no longer the case. They have a proper framework which is very akin to what was once used by the Taliban as a kind of shadow government. They've created what is virtually a shadow government in Afghanistan. They've got shadow governors. They've divided the state into certain six, seven, nine areas. I think, if I remember right, they have a military commission. They have the works, right? So, if and many, I think, about over the last year and a half, about 22 plus groups have joined the PTP, and these are groups from KP. So, with them, they bring the people and the territory that they control. So TTP has been extended willy nilly by these various groups joining in and forming a framework which is now tight. They have a central decision making authority. They appoint governors by, after consultation and so on and so forth. And it's still in the making. I mean, it's not a full fledged thing. So if that is the case, if that is what we know, I am assuming Asim Munir and his ISI chief know much more than us, right? So if this erosion is taking place, they have to do something or they're going to lose that area. And it's also interesting that one is this whole TTP thing. Second is the fact that the Pashtuns under the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, sorry, who have been asking for, what have they been asking for? They've just been asking for some basic dignity of life. That has been denied. Their leaders are thrown into jail. That is and third is the fact that it's a either he can just sit back and do nothing. And this is really, you remember the Lal Masjid quandary which
Hmm.
Musharraf once faced. He could have chosen to sit back and do nothing and let this thing get worse. So sometimes you have a situation where you simply have to act. So, if Asim Munir is planning to do something, the Pakistan army is planning to wrest control back, how can they do it? They have to prop up another group. They will not, I mean, I'm assuming that they won't send their soldiers into Afghanistan because that would be suicide. Right? I mean, at one level, I'm hoping they do. I mean, by all means, guys, go ahead, go right ahead, right? But that would be terrible for them. So, what we've seen on and off in the last so many years is that the Pakistan army has used a part of the Islamic State of Khorasan for its own ends.
Hmm.
My guess is that that ISK is going to be pushed much larger, and then that takes on the TTP. That is their only choice as of now.
So you're basically saying that there will be a, I'm not going to talk link, but there will be a creation by the Pakistani army of factions, various different factions, various different subunits of ISKP, and they'll be infiltrated inside into that place. Now, for the unknown, IS is Islamic State. So, are you trying to tell me that the Pakistani army is going to side in with the worst of the worst in terms of trying to gain an advantage? And how does the West look at it?
See, the West is okay. I'll tell you one interesting thing which happened. You remember they had a dialogue with the TTP,
Yeah.
right? That was and that was going pretty well. Huh? They nearly hammered out an agreement. with Faiz Hamid leading the charge.
mm, mm.
And I must say, they managed it very well. They were ready to go in for a peace agreement with some basic. I mean, they withdrew that whole thing that will control the whole of FATA. They wanted some amount of control over the state, which was granted. And then what happened? In July, Zawahari was bumped off, right?
Hmm.
And everybody knew that the Pakistanis had helped. In August, their own leader, I think Khorasani, he was bumped off in an IED attack, he and two others. After this, which group will talk to you? So somebody sabotaged that whole thing. You know, at the same time, I'm not saying anything, I'm just telling you somebody sabotaged this. That's somebody also carried out the Zawahari strike at a time when it was the worst for Pakistan. Couldn't have had worse timing. Anyway, then the fact that the TTP guy, the head of TTP, are all on various international terrorism, lists and so on and so forth. But this fight between them is also the reason, oddly enough, why the Taliban will never give up the TTP because they are the main fighters against the Islamic State of Khorasan. So you see, it's a complete perfect triangle. How do you break it? So we'll have to, it's going to be some very interesting times ahead. Let's see how this works out.
So let me get this straight. A terrorist state and a terrorist entity controlling Afghanistan are using terrorists to fight with each other. I mean, what? Are
Precisely. Though
are we making a are we
I hope,
making a
sorry, when you say
biryani here or something?
yeah, yeah, I would say more like a, very unusually convoluted spaghetti.
Yeah,
But you're talking of Pakistan as a terrorist state, right? Because I wouldn't really, and in relative comparison, nowadays Afghanistan is more stable than Pakistan.
yeah. It's. I actually, you know what? I'd like to take that word back because that's the known entity that everybody says, "Oh, Taliban are terrorists." So
Yeah,
fair enough. You were kind of bracketing it like that, but their tactics have been so in history. We know that. So let's it's a broad generalization, ma'am. But let's talk about the Baloch. We know that the Baloch are in link, and what we see today is a terrible sight of repression, if I may. And I'd like to find a harsher word, but it's not coming to my mind right now. Uh, what we
brutality.
Brutality, repression. It's terrible. I mean, what we are seeing, and there's a photograph of this police guy holding by neck a old woman. I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
saw that.
sickening. It is. It's sickening. The funny thing is, ma'am, we don't hear anything from the world,
Mm. Absolutely, yes.
and
Nobody.
that's where the doubts come into play. That if Americans are going to let the Pakistani army do what they're doing, what is Pakistan giving to the Americans?
Mm, intelligence, no? They still are pretty good on the ground. And don't forget, the Taliban, our sections, various at various what should I say, various levels, still come back to Pakistan to bank or R&R or whatever you want to call it. Their links with Pakistan have not gone. So there's a tremendous amount of intelligence which Pakistan can get, which very few of us can ever get that kind of in because they've got these guys coming back and forth. Number one. Number two is the Baloch have never been a priority. If the day they find oil in Balochistan, suddenly Baloch will become the endangered people of the world. So there's there's nobody's interested. And the fact that there's also another thing. You see, Balochistan, if you look at it as it's one of the largest states of Pakistan, right? The population is so small and it's concentrated along the coast. If you want to launch an insurgency in Balochistan, it's not possible. It simply doesn't have enough people on because you have to hold ground, right? This is this huge, vast area, and there's this small population of Baloch. Even supposing somebody were to give them enough guns and blah blah blah, there is no way that these people can take over that place and hold it. It's not possible. There are some
Hmm.
mathematics to insurgency. In this case, it is not that those maths don't those numbers don't add up. That is second. Third is, like I said, no, nobody cares. I mean, as long as Pakistan does its thing and gets its. At one time, it was. We even thought that Pakistan was a good source of intel for the US on Iran. So Pakistan has multiple uses, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are telling the Americans a thing or two about what they know about China. So they will play all sides. And that is where the Pakistanis are very good at this. They're very good at playing A against B, B against C, and that's how they survive so far. And they are the
That's
best in terms of, what shall I say, sponsoring terrorism, sponsoring, what shall I say, the non-state actors. They are really very good.
Hmm. The interesting thing, which comes out of this entire game, is that you see the Pakistanis today uh, having a certain sense of realization that, boss, we can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
That we can see that there the realization is there. The action might not be there. The realization is there, and I'm talking about the people. Um, uh, we see them kind of starting to blame the army when I mean, on my channel as well. There's a video I incidentally did with General Dushan Singh. That video went up to about some 300,000 views and stuff like that. It just went viral, and that too, it went viral in Pakistan. Almost 35% of my viewership was from there.
Oh,
Now,
really?
interestingly, people agreed with what we said, that, boss, your army is taking you down the dump. Be very careful. And it was a very polite sort of a discussion, exactly like this. So when we said this, people actually agreed to it. And I'll send you that video, ma'am. You must have a look at the comments. It's amazing. That tells you that there is a certain realization. They might not act on that realization, different story. How do you see the people? Because at the end of it, there's a good old saying, right? Your three missed meals from a revolution.
Mm. Mm. Wait, recently you saw Nawaz Sharif talking about making up with India. I think he said it some 6 times already.
He
If
said
I'm
it
not
3 days after the 370 thing happened. A lot of us were like, what?
like, so, but see, politicians can sense they have the pulse on what the people want.
Yeah.
And he's getting that sense, and which is the truth that you gain nothing by this continuous fighting against India as you're the enemy. That whole vision which was there earlier of making Pakistan, when General Bajwa was there, make it part of a strategic corridor. That raised a lot of hopes. People said, okay, maybe, and it can. It's a very real possibility which can actually work for Pakistan if it opens itself up and says, come on, guys, you just trade across this country. That is their saving, what shall I say, the line which they should be going. So now, if Nawaz Sharif is talking about this, you can be sure that he's not saying it without some backing. One, there
Hmm.
is a realization within the Pakistani army itself because their budget is under pressure. And it was under pressure last year. If you remember, when the IMF came and said, quietly told them, you better slash your defense budget. You see, so that is when the army's defense budget comes under threat, then they get worried. Number three is that if, like you said, they are going in for something in Afghanistan, they want you sitting quiet, right? So the only thing is now, if I can just take that a step further. So if we look at 2024, there is both threat and opportunity for Pakistan. The threat is that with its war, if it goes into a full-fledged fight against in Afghanistan, it will go further down the drain. But the
Hmm.
opportunity is that if it opens up trade with India and across Pakistan, not just taking this whole thing as a strategic corridor seriously, this could be its saving grace. And a saving, please remember, I mean, this is very difficult for people to understand. When I say we need to talk to Pakistan, it is not out of the goodness of my heart or any moral sense. It is purely a sense, keeping in mind that these people will knife you at any time. But in a time like this, it's a good idea to tie it in with a strategic corridor which benefits the people of Pakistan. Hundreds will get benefited. We are talking of people from, say, mechanics upwards, who will service those. You remember there was a paper on India Pakistan trade. And when it was stopped, the numbers who went unemployed. So there is a very sound economic argument to this. And if this goes forward, it will be the saving of this whole subcontinent. Because you need your money elsewhere. I'm not going to say where that is, but I'm sure you know.
Ma'am, I'd agree with you, right? On a practical level, I agree with you. But as an Indian who's seen violence from these guys, how does one even begin to trust
No, no,
a
there's no question
country,
of trust. Hmm.
that is openly propagating the death and the killing of all of us? It's like literally Hamas and Israel. It's the same situation.
That's true.
I mean, Pakistan is Bharat's Hamas. The army is India's Hamas, and Pakistan is India's Gaza. Except the factor that we don't, you know, we don't have hard borders and this and that. But
No,
this is the
see,
thing.
at no time will I say you don't trust the Pakistanis ever. I mean, let's face that. Let's keep that as the bottom line. There is no question. Number two, this whole hatred for India has been brewed by whom? Is by the Pakistan army and its intel. Why do we want to further help them by pushing this narrative?
Yep.
The moment this narrative starts eroding with trade, then the way Pakistanis will look at India will change. It'll take time. But then the thing is, there are Pakistani I know it's difficult because especially nowadays when you read the Pakistani media, it's more like a journal for the Palestinians than anything else. It's all about Palestine. It's nothing about Pakistan. So there's this whole Islam is in danger and all that stuff which is going on. So I am afraid that the general population has been fed so badly on this whole radical radical theology, if you like it. I mean, I'm not talking Palestine, no? I'm talking of the internal theologies which have been spreading. That is beyond redemption. It is possible. But the thing is, the moment you start an economic process, then things begin to change. Now, I am not at all saying that one should start tomorrow, okay, let's start. No, 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 not at all. But this is the way Nawaz Sharif seems to be pointing. The question is, do you want to take it up or not? You have to think about it. Because as a strategic objective, Pakistan is nothing for us. For us, it's just one of those nuisances which are around. So, do you want to deal effectively with that nuisance or not? That's all you need to decide and concentrate on a much larger threat, 10 times larger.
What would you respond to people who say that Pakistan must never be spoken to, at least in the near future, just to ensure that, for the
Yeah,
lack of a better word, an end of Pakistan should be brought about.
like I said, that it's see, yeah, you have the choice. Don't talk to Pakistan at all. In fact, some many people quite sensibly say, look, there's no point. Because even if Nawaz Sharif comes in, we have to wait and see what is his what is
Legitimacy.
the extent of his independence of
Mhm.
movement. I mean, the poor guy has been driven out of Pakistan often enough. So that is one point. Second is what are the army's real intentions? Because at any time they can flip,
Yep.
and then turn around. Like there's this news of this airfield being made in Murid. So I
Read
want to
ke.
know. Yeah, I want to know what that is. What are these guys planning to do? There's the uptick in Kashmir, which is taking place. So my point is, however, is that it should be your choice. It's a choice. You don't want to. If you feel in your strategic interest, you can continue to ignore Pakistan. Go right ahead. But if you feel that it's like tying in something to you. Say you have a what shall I say? something, in terms of creating, right now you have no leverages, absolutely none. By creating trade and economic links, those leverages begin to operate. And that is how you influence policy.
Hmm.
Right now, you can do nothing.
True. Ma'am, when we look at the Pakistanis today, when we look at this whole Nawaz Sharif episode, which is very funny because on one hand, you had news about Imran Khan getting bail in that whole cipher case.
Hmm.
And on the second hand, we have news about him getting beaten up and thrown into hospital. So, I mean, you could say he went for a walk or he went for a jog and say, okay, fine, there's a difference. But here there is, he gets a bail and then he gets thrashed. How does Nawaz Sharif look at all this stuff? Because he should know that this is his future as well in the next 2 3 years. That's question one. And the question two is the sheer factor that Imran got a bail in the most dastardly of the cases, the biggest case, he got scot free. He's got a bail and he's cleared with that.
You're talking the
Doesn't
Toshaka.
Yeah, and the cipher case, man. The cipher is
Ah,
the biggest one. Huh? For state secret wala.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Now he gets a bail in that. Nawaz Sharif will say, "Yaar, why have I come here?"
Actually, there is a very very good source of from Dawn on how the Supreme Court is working. How the courts are working in asserting an independent, quote unquote, independent line.
Hmm.
So they are miffed with the establishment, so to say, because they've been trying to nip their powers, is steadily reducing the powers of the courts. So there is a sense of pushback in terms of assisting him. And Imran Khan, let's face it, he was, it was a pretty bad scene the way that he was pulled in for something which is those cases are terribly shaky. That's separate. You saw how his Shah Mahmood Qureshi was treated.
Oh.
Yeah. So there is this army has gone berserk. The army and its proxies, that is the Islamabad police or whoever the police are, they're all part, the Rangers, they're all part of the same setup. They are now so drunk on power that they believe quite rightly that they can do anything and get away with it.
Absolutely.
So I'm
That's my worry.
actually wondering, why did Nawaz Sharif come back? I mean, you were having a good time in London. He should have stayed back then rather than go through this again. I don't know, but he has a political legacy to give to his daughter. But this, see, even the last nail in Pakistan's coffin, if I may say so, is that what is that the Strategic Investment Facilitation Council, SIFC, which was created. It is completely army led. The DG is an army. The army chief is on the main deciding council. Right at the bottom, implementation committee is headed by an army officer. And recently, the IMF turns out and he says, "What are you doing? What is this SIFC?" So now let's just take it. There is martial law in all but in terms of a written law. It is completely under the army. So let's not kid ourselves that the next election is going to be fair and things like that. There are forces pushing back, like after all, the PTI, I think, is contesting from three places, despite Imran having an order against him. So all that is taking place. Very interesting times ahead. But this is the bottom line. The army is in complete control. And we had the strange side of the army chief going to the US and being greeted by the Department of Defense. I still get. But here you've got the Secretary of State, the UN chief. Everybody's okay with it. So there you go.
And if the Indian Army chief goes there, not a cup of tea, huh? Not a cup of tea even.
Seriously, who's going
They'll
to
tell him,
talk?
"Oh, उधर बाहर कैफेटेरिया है उधर पे जाओ." So
Certainly not in the State Department. And
yeah,
he wouldn't go. I mean, let's look at it that way. He
ma'am.
wouldn't have.
Let's talk Afghanistan. Here is a country now which is trying to stabilize. Has got China inside. stupidest mistake, but in any case, their country. Uh, how do you see Pakistanis looking at them? Because I personally believe that the Chinese have basically lost interest in the CPEC, and they found another way through the Wakhan, going into Afghanistan, coming down Zaranj, this, and getting into the ocean. How do you think Afghanistan sees Pakistan's, uh, for the lack of a better word, demise?
Me, I'm not sure that the Chinese see so far. The
Hmm.
Chinese have shown no inclination to invest in Afghanistan. There's
Hmm.
tuppence in terms of what aid they're giving. They will provide whatever they provide. They provide with fanfare and with a lot of publicity. And of course, the ambassador recently ticked off the Pakistanis for sending the Afghans back. I mean, he said, I mean, that was such an unusual statement where the Chinese ambassador said, what you're doing is very wrong, pushing Afghans back into this country. So there is something going on there. There's no doubt that there is a sense that, that they have, for them, this is their back door. Afghanistan is China's back door, and they have to take care of it because the whole Xinjiang unrest, all that which we all know that there is a sort of a blowback which goes into that whole Wakhan corridor. By the way, at one time had a number of groups operating there. They were all moving in and out, and all sorts of things were going on there. So they are trying to get clear that area up. And if you look at the satellite pictures, there is a move to make a road connection difficult, but it's going on. But whether they will actually open up that road, I doubt, because they don't want anybody, anything, and anybody coming in from that side. They'd far rather operate through Tajikistan, where they have a base. And then they've
Hmm.
made another base for the Tajiks also. So the Chinese are covering that entire periphery, and they can reach Iran through that. They don't particularly, really don't need Afghanistan that much. They just want it to stay out of trouble. They don't want the Americans there. So if someone is thinking that, we'll get the Chinese in Afghanistan, the Chinese are not there in Afghanistan. Not really. Not yet. They
Hmm.
could be.
There's some work which is started with some mining and this and that and all that.
That's all. It's all
Minor.
very. It's
Yeah.
not. No, I won't say it's minor. It could increase into a major investment, provided the situation remains fairly stable, and if they can make a railway in through carry that stuff through Tajikistan and back to China, yeah, it's viable. It's possible. And they are grabbing all the rare earth deposits that we know they're doing that. So it's a Chinese ingress into Afghanistan could be, well, they're not that stupid, I think. I mean, they would go in, but they'd be like I said, with due caution. At the moment, nothing much, but it could change.
Ma'am, we look at the civil society also in Pakistan. So you've got the Baloch standing on one side. You've got the Pashtuns, which I want to talk about next. You've thrown out 1.4 billion people. Pashtuns are pissed off. There are Pashtun regiments within the army, Pashtun formations within the army. They will kind of have a problem there as well. How does he recruit anymore? Because even Punjab is not free of Imran Khan's chungal or one of the divisions between the sects of Pakistan or whatever it is. Even Punjab is not immune anymore. Where does he recruit from? And because why am I saying that? He's losing 35 soldiers a day sometimes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And that's actually a good question, but I I don't know because what is the Imran Khan factor, right? Because there is a very genuine belief that Imran Khan was good for the country, that he was an honest politician.
Hmm.
And of course, who created that picture was the army created that picture themselves. And now they've been hung by their own, by their own actions because you
Created a
remember,
monster.
yeah, they created this guy. But it is also perhaps true that Imran Khan doesn't have that long alleged history of grabbing money and sugar mills and flats, 7 field flats, and all that doesn't sort of seem to tie in with this guy. Plus, of course, he was the cricket captain, right, who got in the World Cup. So he, if the coming elections, He will, if he is not, his party is not allowed to compete, there's going to be trouble.
Hmm.
There's going to be trouble. There's no two ways on that. I mean, these people have imprisoned literally. I mean, someone from Pakistan was telling me the number of hundreds of people who have been imprisoned,
Oh yeah.
by these people. So the deterrent there is Pakistanis now know nothing prevents any of them from being picked up by the police. There is nobody to defend you. The US is not coming, the UK is not coming, China doesn't care. Once the UK would sort of say something, nobody is saying anything. I mean,
Hmm.
can you imagine that you do this level of police tactics and you want to try civilians under military law? No one says anything. It's unbelievable. In any country, somebody would stand up, an ambassador would stand up and say that, look, this is against the rules of law. No one says a word. And on top of that, like we said, they are received in the best circles in the US. So clearly, Pakistan is still a strategic chessboard. That's the only thing. All people don't care anymore. They're like, do what you like. We are done with you. But second thing you said in terms of Pashtuns, this is Nawaz Sharif is contesting from Mansehra. One of
Hmm.
his
Yeah, yeah,
Lahore.
yeah, yeah.
That is also, of course, his son-in-law's. He's from there. Plus, interestingly, Mansehra has a large Gurjari-speaking population. So
Oh, okay.
there's a whole Kashmir connect and all that stuff going on there. But I think the Pashtuns have had pretty much enough of this kind of stuff which they're going on. So if they feel that, and PTI is very strong in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they were, and by the way, with good reason. The administration there was very earlier, not in recent times. This was in the first at least 4 years ago. Was seen as one of the most efficient governments in Pakistan.
Hmm.
So there is a reason why they back this guy. So Nawaz Sharif may, well, yet draw votes. Bilawal, forget him, he's not going to get anything. The focus is going to be in Lahore. The battle for Lahore is going to be intense. I think that is where because all of them are contesting from there. All the three parties, Bilawal, Imran, and Nawaz Sharif. That will be
Let's
the
talk.
thing. Sorry.
Let's talk about them individually, ma'am. Bilawal is spent force at what 28, 30. He's spent. He's done. At least for now, he's nowhere in the picture. Nawaz Sharif has been brought back, obviously, and there's a good old Hindi saying "Chat mangni pat bya." His cases were removed. His this was done. His that was done. He's roaming around free. His apartments and his houses and his bungalows, everything is activated. Everything is fine. And then you got Imran Khan. And when I mentioned Bhutto, it's also Bhutto Zadari and all that entire game. Then you've got the Imran Khan faction, which has broken up, as you said, into multiple party-lets, you know. Uh, but they say that if Imran Khan is alive and he's led to fight the election, even from jail, he will have a good victory if the elections are fair, which is a big question in itself. So, how do you look at the political parties? And the game is the same, right? It's just the name and the face which is changing.
Yeah, absolutely. If the only thing is, like you said, if they allow Imran Khan to stand for election, then that game changes. It has changed hugely because then you're talking of a free and fair election, which has never happened in Pakistan, as far as I know.
Yeah.
But then let's give them the benefit of the doubt. There is no way. Let's be very clear. There is no way the Pakistan army can ever allow Imran Khan to come back. The damage he has done to the army, like someone said, has been worse than anything India could have done. So, I mean, you can't really blame the guy, right? He's just fought back against the thing against him. But so they're not going to let him come back. The question is now, how do they handle this guy? If they
Hmm.
bump him off, either through whatever means that is going on, there's going to be a blowback. And number two, any government which comes without Imran Khan is going to be have very people will have very little confidence in it. Not that, to be honest, in all much of South Asia, uh, let's face it, the democratic quotient is a little low, but nonetheless, you have, like, in our prime minister, we know that we elected him. Yeah, that is why he's there. If he delivers, he continues. That's how this works. I mean, that is how Indian democracy works for all its,
Yeah.
its problems. There is a lot of faith in Prime Minister Modi. That faith is palpable, which will never be there, no matter how much Nawaz Sharif manages, and how much can he deliver. Look at the economy. You're going to have
What?
another IMF package.
Where do you deliver, ma'am?
Exactly, precisely. What can he do? If I were, that's why I'm surprised. Why does he want to come back at all? Whoever comes is going to be dealt a really bad hand. So there is this room for maneuver is so limited that to deliver a victory, it has to be something really dramatic, which is again, we come back to India. If he can get a prime ministerial visit from India, he's made. You know what I mean? Which I'm not at all, I'm not suggesting we should do that. I'm talking of what he would like to do and
Yeah.
what Pakistan would like to do. Should we do it? I don't know. I don't think so, because, like you said, there's no, what's the point?
Hmm.
What are we getting out of it? Nothing. I mean, you don't do international relations out of the goodness of your heart. The question is hard one. What do you get out of it? So we have to see.
Hmm. And lastly, ma'am, I want to ask you, just as a closing thought, what should we do? Should we just let it be, or buy some oil and ghee and crackers?
I really, at the moment, I don't see any point in engaging with them.
No, I mean, I'm
Because
saying, can we build up
trade,
and increase the situation for it to kind of go the direction is as it is going to go?
you
Should
don't
we
know.
interfere, in my very simple words? Should
Huh.
we interfere in this entire thing? Should we?
Oh
Uh,
no,
so you're saying hands off?
hands off. They'll do it all themselves. I mean, why waste your money when they're doing such an excellent job by themselves, right? And it's, what shall I say? It is, you mean, what do you want to do? They, there's very little. Ideally, I would like a situation where the Chinese connection gets completely broken out. That would be my end point. That is all I want from Pakistan. I don't need anything else. The rest of it I can handle. That would be great. But then the thing is, that's not so easy to do, right? And that is why China engages with Pakistan, because they want you to be destabilized from that side also. So that's why I keep say it's a very complex picture, where you can't say my relationship with Pakistan is separate from mine with China. It is not. It is all interrelated. So your policy on Pakistan needs to keep that in mind. Your policy on lots of things have to keep that in mind, that China is a very, very strong player in Pakistan. I mean, you had the ambassador at one point directing security operations. I mean, how much was, and you're talking, by the way, of CPEC going down. They've just signed this Chashma deal, Chashma 5. That's a huge deal. So that, and recently, by the way, about 3 weeks back, the US had put out a notice announcing sanctions on certain Chinese companies for providing missile proliferation assistance to Pakistan. So you see, those threads continue.
Mm-hmm.
So you are only looking at CPEC. You're forgetting that whole backdrop which brought China in the first place, which is nuclear missile. The whole Pakistani deterrent rests on, I won't say rests, but it has a lot to do with Chinese assistance. This, in this case, it's a different one. It's a reactor. It's a civilian. It's Chashma's a civilian nuclear reactor. But those ties will always remain. And incidentally, that fine balancing act which they do is very interesting. You had the US ambassador, I think, visiting Gwadar,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a British envoy, if I'm not mistaken. which areas which were earlier, completely sealed off, and China only is slowly opening up. So there's an effort to balance both, which is what Pakistan has traditionally done. Now they are back at it. Right? So don't, as long as, I mean, China is your real threat, let's face it. That is your bigger threat. China doesn't really like jihadism at all. It is very threatening to itself. So a jihadi stronghold in POK is not really good for China. So you see, you know what I'm saying? The layers and layers and layers which work here. So we've often had conversations with the Chinese long back on jihadism, and now they are beginning to realize this is a very real danger.
I think we should stand on the side, roll the red carpet out from POK into China and say bye. That's the
There you go.
direction. Let Chinese, they like red, right? So we'll put up red carpet, red walls, red food, everything will be there. We'll cater for it. Let them go inside there. Because, ma'am, see, the problem that I see is this, and I say this pretty much, the viewers of my channel will kind of start getting sick of me saying this, but there's a Sino Wahabi leftist alliance in the world today, which is, as Ronald Reagan one time called it, the axis of evil. Uh, I personally call the true axis of evil is the Sino Wahhabi leftist alliance. The Sino being the head, the Wahhabi being the body that with the arms that does all the things, and the leftist being the legs because they've got the legs pretty much everywhere, controlling the entire game in terms of media and everything like that. And Pakistan fits right in the middle of this entire game. Wahhabi it ticks off, Sino it ticks off, and leftist also it ticks off. Very few countries, and that's something which scares me to a certain extent. So, and that's why I keep wanting to dig into Pakistan from different angles so that we could somewhere down the line realize uh, how can we counter this alliance. What we see in Israel is a true example of a Sino-Wahhabi, leftist alliance taking down a country. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much, ma'am, for your inputs, and I'm sure it'll help me dwell into this further. But I'm going to request you on air itself that we need to talk about ISKP a little more. So probably in the new year, I'm going to disturb you once again to bring you back on the channel and talk about this terrorist state owning a probably Pakistan got pregnant and gave a birth to a child, which is called ISKP. Till then, ma'am, thank you so much. Wish you have a great new year. Jai Hind.
Thank you. All the best.